Hey guys, welcome to part two of a very cool conversation that's going to pick up some big steam today. Day two of talking to Don Parnell. We are both stuck snowbound, and so we thought it'd be a great time to utilize our snow days and have a little conversation. Two Marines talking and shooting the bull. But one second, here we go. I'm going to bring him on. And Don, how are you, brother?
Doing great, Taco. Fantastic. Snowed in, but loving it.
Yeah, you know what? I've got to take a page like you were talking about Sean Ryan. I love Sean Ryan's
Yeah.
show. Yeah, I've been watching him since he first started. Joe Rogan, of course, absolutely the master. I love him. He's not only super
hmm
intelligent, asks the right questions. Um, but Sean does do something that Joe doesn't do, and read a little bit about the person. So I thought, you know what, that's a great idea. I think I'm going to do that from now on to give a little explanation right at the beginning so that you understand the person I'm speaking to, because we may not get into the meat of it until 45 minutes down the road if they want to hang into it and hear some really good stuff. Otherwise, they may just tune out. So without further ado, I'm going to read your bio. I hope you don't mind. You're a very humble guy, and this is super impressive. Donald Don Parnell Jr. is a career CIA paramilitary and operations officer who retired in 2020 after 35 years of government service. Mr. Parnell served as a senior leader in various CIA positions and has operational experience in Latin America, Near East, I love that, East Asia, and Europe, to include multiple tours in Afghanistan and Iraq. Mr. Parnell is broadly experienced in field operations, covert action, and cross agency coordination. He has worked extensively within the intelligence, military, and law enforcement communities, to include the FBI, SOCOM, JSOC, and DHS. Mr. Parnell's awards and commendations include the Distinguished Intelligence Cross, the highest award given by the CIA for extraordinary valor, heroism, and the Distinguished Intelligence Star, the second highest award, again, for voluntary acts of courage, the Wazir Akbar Khan Medal, awarded by Afghanistan President Karzai, and the Career Intelligence Medal for Distinguished Career Service. Prior to serving in the CIA, Mr. Parnell spent 2 years as a police officer and 11 years as an infantry officer in the United States Marine Corps, including serving as a company commander with 3rd Marines and flying as an aerial observer in the OV-10 Bronco. Mr. Parnell graduated from Austin College in 1983, an All-American football player. His hobbies include golf, CrossFit, fishing, hunting, skiing. He's married with 2 daughters. Did I get all that right?
Yeah, you do. Actually, I need to add something to that and all that other stuff. The most important thing about that is that I now have 4 grandkids. Uh,
Ah,
two
nice.
of
All right.
them, twins, were just born just a couple months ago on October 23rd.
Oh,
To they
congrats.
join their sisters who are 4 and 2 now. So now that I have my 4 grandkids, of course, that's probably the proudest things we've had recently. So I got to add that to my bio. But yeah,
Yeah, your kids would be dismayed if you
yeah,
were missing that.
I don't put my grandkids in there. I just love it to death. Of course, it's great being a grandfather, of course. But no, I hear all that, and I don't know. I guess nobody likes hearing everything that they supposedly have done, not supposedly, but that they've done, and it just I don't know. Makes me
I
feel old and tired sometimes when I hear it all. So
and rightly so. You've had a hell of a career, man. And
no regrets.
yesterday.
No regrets. Yep, no regrets. Couldn't dreamed of doing it that way. There's no way. I was not my plan. That was not my intent. It was just I kind of somehow it just kind of fell together that way for me. I have no idea. Like it really did. It really did.
Yeah, in meeting you guys, I say you guys. You and I, we come across on the Marine side through a very dear friend. It's kind of cool because if I were to meet you on the street, it would be like peeling an onion back to try to even get you to admit what your stuff,
Yeah.
your what you did in your past. It's kind of like my neighbor across the street, Jack Downing, was like the number 3 guy man at the
Yep.
CIA in
Yep.
covert
Yep.
ops or whatever, right?
Yep. Yep.
and all we ever knew was he worked for the State Department, you know, and all of a sudden he was taking off and going to Beijing or he was going to Moscow, and yeah, trying to get you guys is sometimes like a Delta buddy I have. You know, when I first met him, that was peeling the layers back. I met him in Tampa, and then I am in Afghanistan. I'm in the skiff, and
Mhm.
all of a sudden I see this guy, and he's got his uniform on with no rank, no name tapes, and I'm like, "What are you doing here?" And he goes, "What are you doing here?" And then we start shooting the bull, and all of a sudden it starts coming down more and more. What ODA he had been on, and it's incredible.
It's more in our nature, obviously, of course, at the agency for these past, years, and it's just in our nature, and we don't talk a lot about what we do. And obviously, my whole time when I was working at the organization, I couldn't tell anybody what I did. I couldn't tell them I worked at CIA.
Yeah.
Only after I retired and after I got special permissions. So, and even to this day, it's something that I seldom lead with. It's something that I'm actually, to tell you the better truth, it kind of still makes me a little uncomfortable here. It just saying it does. I mean, I'm careful
I
as
get
best
it.
I can. It's just in our DNA. It's just what you've been trained to do. And so, and then there's a lot of so many. It's also in the special operations community. A lot of guys and gals are the same way, and very humble
Well,
people
hey, so
and everything.
I'm blessed to have you, Don, as the start, and this will lead to Sean Ryan, and then this will lead to Fox News. You'll be a contributor at
I don't know
Fox
about
News.
that. Might be more than I can handle. We'll just take it a step at a time. How's that?
Hey, if not, when I retire, you and I will go jump on those ships and shoot Somali
Yeah.
pirates. How about that? A good retirement gig. Speaking of, yesterday we didn't really cover the um, the the action aspect of it, and your time in the Marine Corps as an infantry officer
Mhm.
was in that dead space before the war kicked off.
Mhm.
Um, and even the yeah, you were in 83.
83 to 94 is active duty. Yeah.
So did you do anything in the first Gulf War? Did you guys get sent
No,
over
I
for that?
didn't. I missed that. I was stuck mostly stuck in East Asia during that time frame because it was so short.
Yeah,
Like our detachment was in East Asia most of the time, so it was obviously very disappointing because we didn't get to go, but then some of my buddies did. But it was such a short duration
yeah.
compared to what we've done the past 20 years in Iraq and Afghanistan. So, no, the irony is I had to leave the Marine Corps and come work at the CIA, and then to go be involved in do all these dangerous things, and be involved in activities in the war zone and combat and things like that. That's the irony, at least for me. Some people would think it would be inverse, but that wasn't the case for me. It also had to do with the fact that I was a paramilitary officer, and so we naturally were assigned in the more austere and dangerous areas, especially in the early days of Afghanistan, the early days of
Right.
Iraq, and even and when both operational areas kind of matured, when the things really got very dangerous. Continuing to serve in both those theaters, and so
Well, let me ask you this. Marine Corps does one thing right. You're a young guy, as a young officer, you're teamed up with a lance corporal or a corporal sergeant.
mhm,
And when you're shooting, most people don't know when we're at the range and we start off 200 yards, 300 yards, and then we do, or is it, yeah, 300 yards, and then we do 500 yards.
yeah,
But in between each set, you're down there switching with your buddies that are in the pits. So you're
yes,
raising the target,
yep,
lowering it, and you hear the crack of the rounds
yep,
right over your head.
yep.
And you can feel that. And I think that is deep down, I didn't think about it then, but it conditions you
Oh yeah.
for the sound of the rounds coming overhead.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I mean, when you hear the crack of the rounds, at first sometimes you're looking around like, wait, somebody shooting at me.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of combat vets can talk about this, but I mean, also the AK, specifically AK-47, the 7.62 round makes a different sound than the 5.56 round does, as with the M16 or the M4, and so it just does. And the
Yeah.
PQ machine gun is dramatically different than anything than the old M60 or the 240, and so you can just distinctly hear it. It's also similar to Taco. The whine, in of the aircraft or helicopters. Oh, that's a Huey, or that's a
Sure.
53, or that's a 47. Aviators out there could probably relate to that. I know. I could always tell, one of my days in OV-10s. Oh, that's an OV. That's not an OV-10. Whatever. I'm sure the same
Yeah.
thing with you when you were flying the Herc. So there's a similarity there. So definitely the rounds. There's as stupid as this sounds, there were times where I was actually being shot at. I'm kind of looking around. I think somebody is shooting at me. I look at the wall behind me. There's this big wall, and they're pickering off the wall. And then there's other times where it's obviously very obvious, but it's I can have so many of these little small comedic moments during the
Well,
most dangerous
that's it. All
situation.
right.
But
My time in Iraq and Afghanistan as a staff guy, face it, I'm a staff guy.
Mhm.
Didn't kick any doors, didn't get into a major firefight in a convoy or anything like that. We train. Do me a favor, tell me what was the first action that you had? How did that feel? Do you remember that first time of, oh my God, you
Yeah.
know, and then how natural was it? Safety off, bring the weapon up, and the training kick
Oh
in.
yeah, your training kicks in like that in all these situations. There's just absolutely no doubt about it. I got to admit, at first time, it's not a you're a bit shocked. You're like, whoa, is this really happening? You maybe you might have to snap yourself out of it for a second or something like that. You're just kind of a little startled by it. This is what it's really like. This is what these people are actually trying to shoot me, or trying to kill me, or trying to blow me up. But the training kind of kicks in pretty quickly. Very soon, hopefully just almost immediately after that initial shock of it or whatever. And then just like anything else, with a lot of other vets could tell you this, you just get more used to it. I mean, you do. And sometimes someone doesn't bother you as much as other stuff does. So, I mean, you got to have a better understanding of what's more of a threat to you than something else. So,
Yeah.
but it is, it is, and it should be for anybody. It's a very unnatural thing to be shot at by bullets and rockets and RPGs and hand grenades thrown at you and stuff like that. It's a very unnatural thing. At least it was for me.
Yeah.
But you learn to overcome your initial
It was
reaction to it.
it was the rockets that at first, would startle the living crap out of you when
Oh
122s
yeah,
landed.
yeah. I've had a lot of RPGs shot at me, and by the time you look up and you register it, sometimes it's already over your head. But
Yeah.
you see it coming right at you. I got a couple of different situations where that's happened. Fortunately,
What was your first firefight?
I think the first true fire we were in. It was in Afghanistan after we went in after 9/11, and we
Uh,
were north of. We were pushing from Tarankot down to Kandahar with Karzai and with the working with the ODA, and we bumped into Taliban and Al Qaeda forces north, and it was one of those things where they were fighting back. I mean, they would occasionally take pop shots at us before then, but they were fighting back, and it was mostly uh, they would shoot at us, and then we would just shoot back and take them out because we had good firepower. Obviously, we had air power, and but just even with small arms because of the accuracy of our weapons and the training that we had. That's pretty quick. And then, seeing, I remember we there was only a small group of us, so there was less than 20 of us at the time. So working with our Afghan colleagues, I remember moving up into this area where we actually ended up setting up for 4 or 5 days on this hill, and you could see blood trails uh, of where they had left their position. Uh,
uh-huh.
a blood trail leading away or back down this little hill or whatever, as we were occupying the locations that they just had occupied. And that was a little bit in seeing the blood trails and seeing, okay, somebody shot somebody here effectively and moved them off the objective.
Yeah.
So that was that. I mean, it increased. It's not like I, a heavy combat veteran. I had a number of 7 or 8 different occasions or days where we'd take fire here or there in various, whether it was in Iraq or Afghanistan or even in other places in the world. So, but no, and sometimes it all kind of blurs together too. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I've got this picture like
Oh yeah,
here.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
That's yeah.
it's so you got a little M4 with an ACOG on it. How accurate was the ACOG for you?
Oh, it's good. It was fantastic. I liked it, especially when more of the open terrain, especially some of the high desert environments, because it gives you a little bit of magnification when you want to, pop your rifle up and take a look at something a little bit closer.
Yeah.
So I found it to be, you know, sometimes guys will use EOTechs or ACOGs, and they got newer stuff out now. They have even one where you can go flip the thing back and forth. Whatever you wanted for your particular situation, what you were wanting to do sometimes.
Right.
But I like the ACOG the most, especially when we were moving out in the open desert and stuff like that. I like that. I like the application it gave me just by popping it up and taking a look at things or whatever. But it was fine. The imports, I never had any problems with it. So I actually, when we first went into Afghanistan, I had an AK that
Really?
didn't even have any rails on it or anything. Didn't have any toys on it except it was just a basic AK. And their reliability and how good they are depends a lot bit on where they were made. The quality of the weapon itself, where was it made in Bulgaria, made in China, or wherever, and how it's been maintained, and then of course the ammo. So there's a lot of variable factors to the AK, but it's some of them
What
can
was
be.
it? What was the max effective range for that thing?
I think they say it's about 300 meters. To tell you the truth, I think it's more like, I don't know, 150, 200 meters. A lot of it depends upon the quality of the weapon, the quality of the AKs. It's the most reproduced. I think it's the most reproduced rifle,
Hmm.
at least automatic rifle in the world or in the history of the world. I believe that's the case. And the quality, the weapon itself, because there's a lot of different, like I said before, that make it. And then the ammo itself, a lot of different people make the ammo. So there's a lot of variables from that.
Hmm.
I mean, I saw AKs even my days in Afghanistan where the rifling was almost just all gone inside the barrel because they'd used it so much. And so the rounds were just going everywhere.
Right.
Uh,
Spray and pray.
yeah. So there's a lot of variables with that. And I'm not a big, I'm not a big gun guy like some guys are, big gun guys. I can tell you all the dimensions and stuff like that. So I'm probably not the best authority to talk about, what's this or what's that, but that's just been my experience. But you're not it's not very accurate out in my humble space. It's not very accurate beyond about 100, 150 meters. And even at that, it kind of depends. Not to
Yeah.
say you can't find one that's not accurate out to 300 meters. I'm just saying there's a lot of variables with that.
Well, when you guys get over there, they just said, "Hey, here you go, some brand new AKs we brought in," or were they able
It was
to
a little bit
at least
different. It
get
kind
you?
of depended on my M4. Of course, I deployed with it and I had it with me. I can remember in Iraq when we did the Iraq invasion, I actually found I had an extra AK on the roof of the turret of the Humvee I was working out of because I actually I found it on the battlefield. Did an operational check on it and some extra magazines. Test fired it, but it was only a backup to a backup to a backup to a
Yeah.
backup. Okay.
Yeah.
And the fact that I could just keep it strapped up on the Humvee for most of the time and clean it occasionally worked well for me. And then, of course, I had my M4 and my sidearm and things like that. And we had a machine gun in the turret. So, but no, I mean, that was Iraq. Afghanistan was much different than that. But, yeah.
What,
Whatever.
tell me about the ambush.
So that was,
The
yeah,
big
that
one.
was in Iraq, a Western Al bar. I was working with we were working out of a location that was just in Western Al bar in Western Iraq, and we had gone into this one. We had never gone in the adjacent little town that was close to where we were located. We just had gotten there to get kind of set up, and we're kind of doing some recce's and get some eyes on the terrain, the areas around us, and just trying to build up our situational awareness. And so my small team with some of the members of the the ODA. We're going to go into town, and we actually weren't even going to get out of the vehicles. We were just going to drive around a little bit. We knew that blending in was going to be a challenge. We did our best to try to do that, but I think it didn't. Once we got in, because we had never actually put eyes on the actual town itself. We got in there, and my vehicle was I think it was what those Mercedes G5, kind of boxy, Mercedes SUVs. But it was up armored. It was a level 7 armored vehicle. But the other vehicle was I think it was a Suburban, but it was unarmored, didn't have any armor on it. This was the early days. We went in, saw what we wanted to see, didn't like what we saw. A lot of people were out, got a couple of nasty looks. So we started heading back out of town. Things looked okay. And then we came up behind this one vehicle, SUV, and there were probably 4 military-age males that were in their car. 2 of them jumped in the far back of the passenger compartment of this. I guess it was a beat-up old Suburban or something. Which also automatically we were concerned about that. Like, why are these guys coming out of the back seat and jumping into the back compartment? And then they just kind of took off at a 45-degree angle off the road and onto another road and over a hill, and we didn't really think much about it. Mm-hmm. We just kind of kept on trucking along, but the way the road kind of played itself out, the bend around, they actually kind of took a little bit of a shortcut going through this dirt road and came back out on the hard paved road. And we're outside of town now, so there's not a lot out there. And then we go around the corner and there's a guy standing there in the same vehicle. He's standing there with his buddy with an RPG, and like, boom, he's going to fire it. But all that happens almost like that. I think I'm not even 100% sure he shot the RPG, because we see the RPG, he sees us, and he kind of, it's a blur to me, to tell you the truth. I'd have to go back and ask. It's a blur to me. They jump back in their vehicle. No, I take that back. The 2 guys standing outside the vehicle just run off, and the vehicle takes off. And I think the guy still has the RPG in his hand. I can't remember if he shot it or not. I know that sounds ridiculous. Because one reason I wasn't in the lead vehicle. I was in the second vehicle. And so, man, things got a bit confusing after that. We have 2 different vehicles. Anyhow, we make the call to go after these
2 guys runners?
2 guys
or the car?
The vehicles. And so we end up getting split up. It's kind of complicated, convoluted. We end up getting split up. And we're trying to link back up. I'm in a stationary position, and believe it or not, the 2 vehicles, we drop off some of the team from the other vehicle, chase after these 2 guys, up over this hill, and then our 2 vehicles kind of set up a strong point in this location, though it's still pretty wide open. And I walk over from my up armored vehicle over to the unarmored Suburban to get with the communicator over there, trying to get comms up. We were having difficulties getting comms up, and then we start taking fire. And then so we're returning fire, and then I hear explosion behind me, immediately behind me. It was an RPG, and one of the guys had just had his arm taken off by an RPG and was laying at my feet. So his name was Joe. We need to get out of there. We need to get out of there, link back up. The guys in my other vehicle we understood the same, that we need to get out of there also. So I put Joe in the back of the Suburban. Another guy that's with us at that vehicle, Chuck, he ran around to the driver's side, got the vehicle started. I jumped in the front seat, and then we kind of both, and out of there, we reconsolidated at another location. Only for, and we're still trying to get contact with the guys that are over the hill, and they have their own thing going on at the same time. And what we didn't realize was when one or two of the RPGs came in, it had hit the gas tank in this particular vehicle, and all the gasoline had gone out of it. So all we had was the gasoline that was in the fuel line. So the vehicle didn't go very far.
And you've got a wounded guy in the back.
Got a wounded guy in the back, and in between all of that, we had made the call to send the other vehicle back over the hill to get them, the armored vehicle, go back over the hill to get the other rest of the team. And then our vehicle died because we were going to get him to the base because the base wasn't very far away.
Right.
And it died out in the middle of, unfortunately, where a dirt road meets into the hard surface road, and it is a wide open area. There is like zero cover.
Yeah.
First, we're trying to get it started again, and then I think we all realized that it's a fuel problem, and we're not going to get started. And then there's three of us in that vehicle. Joe's in the back with this severed.
How did you treat that? I mean,
Well,
we're talking about medical stuff.
Times trying to treat it, and I was unsuccessful almost every time, because every time I started treating it, I had to start fighting. Or I was, first of all, it was very difficult because it was right. I mean, there was no stub. I mean, there was nothing. Wow. And it was kind of like this. It kind of came in, and
was it the shrapnel? The shrapnel?
No, it was the actual RPG itself, the fins or whatever. It just sliced his arm right off, just like boom, like you wouldn't believe.
Wow.
Yeah, and it exploded behind me. Yeah, I turned around and I was looking down, who's at Joe, and he was looking up at me. He literally was between my legs, and of course, what was left of his stub he was bleeding pretty bad. And when you lose a limb, you'll bleed pretty bad initially. Then your body it'll slow down, the veins and arteries will start sucking back into your cavity or your body, and it'll try to shut itself down a little bit. But so me and Chuck get out of the vehicle. We're actually returning fire back over the vehicle towards where all the fire's coming from, trying to figure out what we're going to do. And I look at, we're on the hard pavement road, just a 2-lane road. There's nothing out there. And yeah. I look to my right, there's nothing. I look to my left, and I could see some vehicles a couple 100 meters away, 150 meters, maybe 200 meters away, that had stopped. They realized something was going on. There's 1 or 2 vehicles. And I realized that we needed to get out for that. That vehicle was just a bullet magnet. And so I told Chuck, I said, go get us a vehicle. And I pointed in that direction. Chuck, he was awarded the Service Star for this. I wrote him, and deservedly so. So he takes off. He's a short little guy, really fast, and boom, there he goes. So they all start shooting at Chuck because that's something they talk at. And so that didn't last very long, though. And so I went over the vehicle. Unfortunately, it was the hot side, but I went on the vehicle, and Joe's in there, and he's kind of in and out of it. He's lost a lot of blood, and he's kind of in and out of it, and he's in some pain, obviously. And so I'm trying to get him out of the vehicle. The rounds are just, they're slapping the hard plastic and the hard in the middle of there's all around me, just slapping that, the hard plastic that you have in the SUVs. And you can just, they're hitting all around me. Okay. And I throw him over my shoulder, and I took off after Chuck, who's practically at the vehicle by this time. It took me a while.
Yeah.
And I'm not moving as fast as Chuck was moving. First of all, I got 190 pounds of guy on my right side. I start out pretty well. And then, I'm on pure adrenaline. It was weird when I got Joe out of the vehicle, and all the rounds were just like hitting.
How many guys are shooting at you?
I don't know, but I don't know how many guys were shooting at me, but enough.
Yeah, and they're shooting AKs, right? Yeah. So if you just get some distance They're not going to be that accurate,
Unfortunately, the
right?
direction I moved didn't increase the distance from them. It was just kind of more kept the same distance, just still on a different line. But
Oh,
then that's more, I talked yesterday, when we talked last about my two occurrences with divine intervention. One of
yeah,
them was the 2,000-pound bomb that we talked about before. This was the second one. It felt like when I'm getting Joe out of the vehicle, fully exposed, I felt like, I'm going to take her around any second, and we're going to both go down. But it felt like there was this force field around us. I know it sounds weird, and I'm not a
no,
very religious person. Like I said yesterday, more spiritual, but it just did. I don't know. And we started running, and I started running with Joe on my shoulder, and he's literally slung across me, and I could see all the rounds hitting around me. Like I could step on him.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
step on him. And then, they start shooting RPGs at me. And they stopped shooting at Chucky and they started shooting at me. Because first of all, I'm a bigger, slower moving target.
right.
And as I get closer and closer, I am getting slower and slower. I am now. I've never been there. I've never been in that condition or state before or since. It's almost, I don't know. It was just, I say this at times with some guilt. And that sounds like a weird word to use. But
Right.
in that moment in time when I'm trying to get carrying Joe and I'm trying to get him to that vehicle, nothing else mattered.
Yeah.
And when I say nothing else mattered, this is the guilt part of it. I can remember, was it 14 or 15 years later, I'm walking my oldest daughter down the aisle. And I remember the guilt I felt by almost not making it home 15 years later to do something that was very special to both of us. And the fact that I almost really, why would I risk all this stuff and cause so much pain to my family? That's a weird thing to feel. This is afterwards, at least with me. But nothing mattered except getting Joe to that vehicle. I mean, nothing. And when I mean nothing, I mean nothing. I mean, I was just maxing out. So I'm max blast, all I can do. And by the time I don't know how I make it, I end up just kind of throwing him on the hood of this vehicle. And I'm installed. I'm almost like
Is
all
is
cramped up.
Joe Army or is he?
Sorry, he's one of the guys off the ODAs.
Oh, okay.
So I get him in the back of the vehicle with Chucky's help. And this is the funny part, the comical thing. So Chuck had hijacked his car to get us out of the situation, which is great. But there was this Iraqi family that was in the car that were in the ditch next to the car on the safe side when the rounds are still coming in as you're driving the car from the left side of the car. And this guy, I'm about ready to get in the passenger seat, and I see this family of like 4 in the ditch. There's a nice little ditch there, and they're kind of down. And this guy steps up, and in English, he says, "My money, my bags," and he points inside the car, inside the SUV. It's this old rickety SUV, Toyota or something, whatever.
Right.
And I actually start unloading their bags in the middle of the firefight. I'm like, they're like mostly like those Walmart bags, grocery
Yeah.
bags. I'm unloading a couple here. I don't go around the back, and I bring stuff out, and in between, I'll pop a couple rounds here and there, and then I'm kind of looking to see if I have any petty cash on me, and I
Yeah.
didn't. And I'm apologizing to them as best I could. Of course, they probably couldn't understand me. And then we couldn't get the vehicle started. It had died. And we had to get the driver back in the vehicle to start the vehicle. And then he started negotiating with Chuck for his watch. This is all during the firefight. out the
My
window,
God.
Jordan board. I'm yelling at Chuck, I think he wants your watch. And Chucky's like over there ripping his watch off. And let's go, go, go. And we take off at like 2 miles an hour, chugga, 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 chugga.
Right.
Students shooting RPGs at us. Mostly, not mostly, they are going high. There's a tendency for them to sometimes kind of lean back and shoot that thing and anticipate it. And they'll shoot a little high and the rounds are skipping over us. And or they would go over our head and then they would skip. Sometimes an LPG round will skip and hit the ground and explode further down range. Saw a couple of those coming right at us. Fortunately, they were high. By the time I made a call on one of them, it was already over my head. We were able to make our way back. Now we still got the rest of the team and in our Mercedes G5 back up over the hill, and they got their own thing going on. They ended up, the driver, one of our guys ends up pulling up close to this house and where the team was at, and the team's going to jump in the vehicle, and this guy steps out on this, as it was told to me, the guy steps out on this front porch, this maybe about 15 meters away, not even that, 15, maybe 10 meters, and he has an RPG in his hand, and he launches it. And when he launches it, one of the guys saw him and shot him, and he went back like this. And so the RPG hits, you have the driver's side door, and then the passenger door, rear passenger door on that left-hand side behind him. It hits right above the frame, but it glances and it tears open I actually got a picture of it. It tears open the metal on the vehicle from the fins, because instead of hitting like this, it hit like that. And
so it doesn't detonate on impact.
It didn't detonate. The fins ripped open the metal of the car, steel and the aluminum and stuff, and it kept going. And then of course they neutralized that target at the same time. And then they're driving out of there. This is crazy. So they're driving this way in the same vehicle, and an RPG comes in off this little small high ground or ridge to their right, and it hits the hood of the vehicle because it's perpendicular to the movement. The vehicle's going this way. Mm-hmm. The nose hits the hood of the vehicle, bounces off, and keeps going, glances off. Now, had that gone off, that RPG is just going to tear up that Mercedes G5. It's just going to rip it, even though it's a level 7. I think it might have been a level 5, but it's level 7, and it's going to rip it to death. And it didn't go up; it just bounced off, and there's a little dent on the hood. Damn. Like somebody hit it with a hammer. Anyhow, we're able to get back on the. We're driving. So you're talking about trying to get Joe's. Now we're clear of the fire. We're making our way back to base in this rickety old SUV. We're still having problems with comms. And we get close to the gate, and I go back to our base, and I'm like, hey, we can't drive up there in this vehicle. So I'm trying to get some sort of dressing on Joe's arm with not a lot of success.
Right.
And we stopped the vehicle way short. Chucky gets out and runs all the way up to the checkpoint. We come on our base, our fire base, and there's some 10th Mountain guys that are pulling security force there. Unfortunately, they came down with their Humvee, picked us all up, and we had Joe on the dust off on the medevac bird. They had two dust offs right there. They had two medevac birds right there on our base, and he was going like that. He just survived. Great, obviously he lost his right arm, but everything else. He ended up doing a full career in the Army.
Really?
Oh yeah. He's got his full 20 in the Army even after that. Obviously with this prosthetic and everything. And and I visited him like 4 or 5 months later at Walter Reed. Yeah, that was probably the most humbling thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
Up to Walter Reed in the amputee ward, and I found Joe, and I found a lot of other, soldiers and Marines and sailors that were pretty messed up. It was, you know, it was a very humbling experience to go up there. But I would, and then, you know, it was 4 or 5 months later, and Joe still hadn't talked to anybody except for some emails, anybody's from his ODAs. So we were able to, for his first time, and all, you know, to really kind of talk about what happened.
Yeah.
And
You remember, was he awake, conscious, or was
yeah,
he
he was in and
out?
out. He was in and out a lot. He was in and out. So there are times when I thought he was out, but he was actually awake. But he was, you know,
Were you talking to him during the run? Hang in there, you got this. You know, do you remember anything like that?
I did say some things like that during that when I'm carrying him.
Yeah.
Uh, this is going to sound ridiculous, but I thought I was going to get shot in the ass like Forrest Gump. I
Yeah.
actually had that thought. You know, and Forrest Gump's got the ice cream after getting shot in the ass. You know, with
Yeah.
Lieutenant Dan and all that stuff in the hospital. But I had this vision of me getting shot in the ass or shot in the side of the ass, and then going down, trying to carry Joe, and then we would have really been screwed.
Right.
I don't know why I thought that. I don't know. I just said it's not going to happen. And I pretty much willed myself and Joe to that vehicle. I'll tell you
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I mean, that was 20+ years ago, but I mean, I couldn't do it today. I'm an older guy. I'm an old man now, but I mean, uh, I don't know. It was just weird. I write about it. I'm writing my memoirs, and I write about it, and I think it's probably a little more powerful in words. But you know, it was just at least for me that, and I had a number of other, you know, nothing like some of these real chiseled combat veterans, but I had a number of other close calls and incidents and combat incidents and experiences. But this one was the most personal. And even it was more personal than, yeah, I had a 2,000-pound bomb dropped on top of my head and walked away from that. But this one, and there was other things, hand grenades come over the wall here and firefight over there. But I don't know why this one was more personal. It wasn't a lot of me doing a lot of fighting. I mean, I did return some fire and stuff like that. I don't know how effective it was, but you know, we were able to get everybody out of there. Nobody died on our side.
Yeah.
Number died on the other side, the Iraqi insurgents, and but it was just more personal. It's when
Well,
somebody's
you've got a body over your shoulder, you know, and looking back on it now, do you remember all those times at TBS that
oh,
where we did the endurance run for 6 miles
oh
full
yeah,
gear,
man,
or we did the deal picking your buddy up and hauling his butt?
yeah. I mean, all that came into play. Plus, Joe
Yeah.
had a little bit of kid on, so I got to the point where, I mean, it's not very nice for me to. I was just saying, "Eff it, Eff it, Eff it, Eff it. We're gonna make it. Eff it." I mean, I was just absolutely. I can remember just man, ain't nothing, and I mean nothing, gonna stop me from getting where I gotta. We're getting where I gotta get. You know,
Yeah.
and it just was that way. I just almost kind of. It's like a way I just kind of blacked out. I just kind of just just totally 1,000%. I mean, I'm talking just everything in your body is just focused on that one thing. I mean, everything. I can't explain it. And maybe just, I don't know if it's happened to other guys. I've talked to some of the guys and they said they've had similar experiences. Nothing else matters. Not even my own life. You know, when you go into these situations, and whether you've known the guy all your life or only known him for a couple of days, it doesn't make any difference. My biggest fear, I don't know if fear is the right word, but I got whatever, I'll use it. Fear is the right word. Is not being killed, is letting my buddy down.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And I don't care who it is. You know, I don't care if I'm not going to let my buddy down. I'm the guy to my right, guy to my left, the guys I'm with. You know, I'm never going to let you down. I'm never going to leave you behind. I'm never going to let you down. Whether it was CIA, Green Berets, you know, SEALs, it doesn't make any difference. If we're together, we're out there, you know, one team, one fight. And that's my biggest fear. And I wasn't going to let him down. There's no way. There's just no way that was going to happen. And it didn't happen that day. There's no doubt there's other days it probably could have, but that was it. That was my biggest fear. And I wasn't going to let my buddy down, regardless who
And
that
that
was. And
that's an
it's
amazing,
interesting how
amazing.
that drives you like that. All these other things, and who you work for, who you don't work for, what you do, it doesn't matter. I mean, we were out, we're part of my mission, what we were doing out there was trying to collect intelligence for a variety of different ways and means. And I won't get into how we do that in these environments, but it's very difficult. It's very difficult work. But heck, if it were easy, anybody could do it. So, I mean, we know this. I mean, everybody knows this. This stuff just doesn't show up on your doorstep. It comes with a lot of hard work. And sometimes, at least my organization, my past organization, CIA, and others can get a bad rap on some things. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of very courageous, a lot of good patriots, a lot of good warriors that are out there working in the shadows for doing the deed, collecting the intelligence that needs to be collected, saving lives, and in certain cases, collecting the intelligence that just got unbelievable importance to our current situation in the world. And that's done on a lot of different sides, a lot of different angles. This was just one aspect of it, but that was probably my most personal engagement with me. I remember that night. So I get back to the base, and so there's another comical thing that kind of comes of it. So I get back, and we get Joe and the dust off, and I'm going to go find Major Don Franklin, who was the ODB commander. And they're launching the QRF, and they're going to go out to hook up the other guys. And Chucky goes with the QRF, and somebody needs to tell the guys that are at the base in the ODB, which is the next higher up from the ODA, happen to be co-located with us there, what the situation is and what we got. Mm-hmm. And in all the middle of that, I brief him up real quick. I'm trying to get back on the vehicles for the QRF, but they already took off. They quickly hooked up with our other remaining group, and they were all back in base and probably 20 minutes later, but we didn't know that at the time. So then I turn, and one of these young soldiers from 10th Mountain was sitting there looking at me. He goes, "Don, you're hit. And I'm like, I'm hit. I'm hit. He goes, so we start having this argument. He says, I've been hit and wounded because you're covered in blood and you must be. And I'm saying that I'm not. Yeah. And I start thinking, well, maybe I am.
In shock.
And so we start ripping off all my gear and my clothes right there. And he's basically doing the whole, check on me, and he's checking everything, and I'm not hit that I can find yet. I mean, and I go, listen, I told you I wasn't hit. He goes, but you're covered in all this blood. And so I go inside, and there's a mirror, and I see why he was that way. I was completely covered, at least especially on the right side of my body from head to toe with Joe's blood.
Wow.
And I mean, it was just like, a bucket. I don't know. I guess the way he was on my head or something or whatever. Yeah, I can see why. I mean, my eyes were all crusty with dried blood. I mean, and that happened to me before, but not quite that bad. And so that was a comical thing with all of that. I thought was, having this argument about he thinks I'm hit and I don't think I am. You think I would know, and but the good thing was Joe survived, and we didn't get anybody else killed that particular day.
How long did it take you to come down?
The ODA, Aaron Hollyman was, believe it or not, was killed back in that location almost exactly a year later. Sad case. Aaron was the 18 Delta off the ODA, and that same ODA came back a year later, and Aaron was killed on that location almost exactly a year later. Mm-hmm. But and they've lost a number of other guys, but there were the other times that happened, but that was probably the most personal for me. You know, at first, I can remember that night. That's what I was going to share with you and share with some of your listeners. Uh, Finally, I calmed down. I cleaned up a bit, you know, and it's nighttime, and I'll be the first one to tell you. And I've done this in a couple other minutes. I cried my eyes out. It just, uh,
I was
and
gonna ask, what is the emotional release?
all I see was my kids, you know, and every time I had these close calls, I'd had these guilty feelings of orphaning my children. I mean, they wouldn't be orphans because they'd still have their mother, but
Yeah.
it was just the guilt that came with that, and what did I just do? What I almost did? Why would I why would I take such risk to have them possibly grow up without a father? And so, and all those emotions, you know, came out that evening, and I think that happens with a lot of guys, and maybe, and I'm not ashamed to talk about it. Even that the engagements increased and the closer calls increased, I still would have some of those moments. Sometimes it'd be a little bit later, it might be 2 or 3 days later, 2 or 3 weeks later, but you know, just kind of a big sigh, like, oh my gosh. I mean, it kind of built up for me over a couple of years, and then I think it was like in 05, 06. I thought my number was up for a while. Guys were calling me the bullet magnet and stuff, you know, just get involved in the worst stuff. And I was fine, even though everything was fine after that. But I mean, I didn't have any much. I mean, I had some other issues for a few more years, not issues, but other close calls. But things backed off, and as we got in the latter part of the 2000s, just because I became more senior, I got, you know, I was doing other different types of jobs, but no, that relief that evening was something I hadn't experienced. It just, they're unique in experiencing them, and the emotions that have to come out. And I remember, fast forward, you know, it's like 2011, and it was about, I had some guys that had worked for me that were there at the coast bombing, you know, Zero Dark 30, the movie, the bombing, and stuff, who wrote suicide vests at the meeting, and talking to some guys that were some of the first guys on scene for that, and having to deal with the mass casualty event. And
Right.
I've had to deal with that, obviously, when I was impacted by the 2,000-pound bomb, until dealing with a lot of casualties, a lot of very serious casualties without enough medical training to deal with significant trauma. And talking to them, it's like, hey, if you need anybody to talk to about this stuff, I'm always here for you. And then I realized, looking in the mirror, that I'd never talked to anybody about it.
Yeah.
So in 2011, I did. I reached out to, internally, we reached out to some folks, and man, it was like a 1,000-pound rucksack was lifted off my back. 10 years of this was like a 4.5, 5-hour session I had. It was just amazing. I just had no idea, though. You felt like, you
Oh, yeah.
know, you get it all out, and then and I found since then, and this is just for me, and I think everybody's different, the more I tell these stories, it's very medicinal for me in a weird way. When it's obviously, the more I talk about it, the easier it is for me to talk about it. Not some of those. There's a couple other ones that are pretty bad, but I mean, some like that, I can do that. There's some areas I don't like to go, but I do find it very medicinal, and I also find it helpful, at least for me, that I was using myself with my men, especially as I got more senior. I use myself as an example, saying, "Hey, you know, if you guys are having issues, obviously you can talk to me, talk to this, you know, but there's people out there that can. These are normal feelings. This is. I've never liked the term disorder.
Yeah,
It's
PTS.
DS. I don't use the D because it ain't a freaking disorder. I'm not a medical expert. I know that. When you go through these, you know, these type of significant events, it can be very normal. People react to it differently. That's been my experience. Like I said, I'm not a PhD or a doctor, but just been my experience. And so I encourage. I mean, till this day, I mean, I still talk to my buddies, man. I mean, we're chatting all the time. I mean, it helps, especially anniversary dates are tough when you've been there, Taco. I know. October's a bad month, especially the third week in October. It's never good. And my two grandsons were born the third week of October this year, October 23rd. So uh, both opposite ends of the spectrum. December 5th, October 31st, and then there's another date, June 25th, are 3 days that stick out with me. There's a few others, but those are the three significant ones. And then, of course, the anniversary dates of when some of our buddies didn't make it home. Excuse me, the anniversary dates of their deaths. And you feel this, at least I do. A lot of us have served over there in various capacities. We all have a laundry list, unfortunately, of men and women that didn't make it home. Our friends, or good friends of ours, that didn't make it home. And I'm nobody different or special than anybody else. And I have those that I was with when they were killed in action in theater, and I have those that they were just good friends of mine.
Yeah.
I have those that I had to notify their families because we did our own notifications, or a combination of all the above. Well, there are certain anniversary dates that really get to me more than others. There's no doubt, as it does with anybody else. Mine are no more special than anybody else's. They're just different for me.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
one last thing for you, Susan. So
yeah.
I say this is because I always feel like there's a huge obligation on my behalf to remember these guys. And I can't remember who used to say this, but as long as they say your name, you'll never die.
Right.
So that there's always this huge and responsibility, not obligation, probably responsibility. And I accept that responsibility and I accept that obligation. Obviously, and to remember these guys and remember them on, whatever day you want to remember them on, or every day if you want. I mean, I think I'm every day. I mean, I can just go on and on names. I'm always concerned about giving names and forgetting about somebody, but some close buddies of mine like Brian Hook and Nate Delamar and others that just will always be a part of my life. I'll always be a part of their families. I'm still in touch with their families, and this is forever. It doesn't go away. So, but it's healthy. I want people to don't take this lightly when these men and women that don't make it home. We need to pause and reflect at times and remember the sacrifices that they made. Those are the real heroes. I mean, you hear it a lot. It's cliche to say it.
Yeah.
But it's really true.
Yeah. I'm with you, man. In Iraq in 2005, I was at TQ, out to Qadim. So, it sounds like you were out west of Ramadi.
Yeah.
So,
but even farther west than that, but I was way out there.
yeah. Yeah, it's not a picnic garden spot.
No.
But we had Fallujah shooting us. I mean, when I got off the airplane up at Al Asad, we got hit with 8 125 millimeter rockets. It was like welcome to Iraq.
Yeah.
So the compression, see the flash, see the explosion. Yep. I'm like, what the hell is that? And all of a sudden the compression hits you and you're like, oh shit. That was a wake-up call. But it was when you talk about a suicide vest, that's what I worry about. Sarah Adams was on Sean, talking about the 1,000 fighters that have come up through the very porous southern border, and are probably in place to start doing stuff. Having witnessed the effects of the IEDs on our guys, like literally walking back from chow, and my sergeant was up on desk. This guy's sharp as hell. And I got to carry this brick. You know, you guys got the little mini radios. I had the big, giant 10-pound brick.
Hmm.
And I'm walking back from chow, and he goes, "Hey, sir, you up?" And the colonel was gone, so I knew he was talking to me. And I'm like, "Yeah, what's up?" "Hey, sir, we got a mass cache." You know, it's like, well, how many? Unknown. Are they being flown in? No, they're coming in the back gate in the ambulance.
Yeah.
Okay, roger that. I'll detour and head over to the hospital because as the air boss, you know, we had to coordinate the CH-46 guys.
Yeah.
We only had so many aircraft, right, for medevacs and then the Cobras and the Hueys. So you had to coordinate to see whether or not you had to bust into crew rest, how many patients you could get on to a helicopter depended on their condition. You know, was it burns or was it shot? Was it this, that? You know, so many factors.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And I'm like, Roger, I'll hit over there. I'll give you an update so that, you know, we can start spinning up the helicopters. And I'm standing there. Ronnie Jackson was a good friend of mine. We ran all the time. We get shot at by the sniper over in Habanilla. And the best part was that guy's bullets were, you know, nowhere near us, 10,
Mhm.
30 feet away, you know, hear the
I call
crack.
that I call that harassing fire. It's just kind of a pain in your side or a pain in the neck, but you know,
Oh, you're jogging by and you're doing
no,
this, hoping he sees you in the scope. Pull your pants
I'm
down, moon
lucky,
him.
to get that one that one shot, but you never
Yeah,
know.
stop. We pull our pants down, moon the guy. But
Yeah.
no, Ronnie was a great guy. You ran a little faster when you came around that corner, which
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
closest to that dude. But um, I'm out there with Ronnie. He was the head trauma surgeon, and he
Mhm.
ended up going on being the President Bush's surgeon,
Mhm.
and then Trump or Obama for 8 years,
Heard
then
that
Trump.
name. Yeah, that's why I've heard that name. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a great guy. Ran for Congress, won, and
Okay.
he's up in Congress now. But Ronnie, it was all the medical people, and we're all standing on this patio where the ambulance can pull up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just remember the sound of the ambulance Hummers coming in. They back up, they stop, the engine shuts down,
Mhm.
and when the guy opens the door, this smell
Yeah.
just came out. I'm just a
I
couple
know.
feet
I
away,
know. I know. I know exactly. I know. Yep.
and the and then when the first kid came out, it was like a Bradley got hit with some sort of IED
Burning flesh.
napalm mixture.
Yep.
And when the first kid came out, no nose, no ears,
Yeah. I know.
skin dripping,
I know.
um, and they eased him off. And the kid, I remember this Navy kid just evacuating his stomach, just puking into this
Yeah.
Hesco. And as the smell hits you of that burned flesh,
Yeah.
so you know those little things in my mind.
Yeah.
That particular, there was a couple guys. One died on the table. There are four guys. One died on the table. One died in the medevac to Balad. One died in the C-17 on the way over to Texas,
Yeah.
and then the other guy died in Texas. So they didn't make it.
Yeah.
But that incident always sticks in the back of my mind because we had to spool up the helicopters, and
Yeah.
you can only take so many guys with burned
Yep.
victims. And then the other thing that really stuck out in my mind was a suicide bomber was over in Ramadi, and they were doing interviews for policemen.
Mhm.
And so this guy's in line with all of these Iraqis who are
Clocks
going to
himself off.
well, he had the vest on,
Mhm.
and as he was in line, and there were lots of Iraqis around. I mean, we're talking a couple hundred.
Mhm.
And what happened was two Marines came out of the building with a dog. They had
Yeah.
they had one of those dogs, and the dog started barking, but it wasn't barking at him. But this dude thought the dog had outed him. And so he goes, Allah Akbar, and he backs up against this wall, and I mean just the ball bearings
Yeah.
just
That must have
killed
devastated the
immediately 20 some people. and then just wounded another 70 horrifically.
Yeah.
So we were doing helicopter support from TQ over to Ramadi, back forth, and bringing these guys. And then we're filling up the hospitals of Abu Ghraib and Baghdad and Fallujah, all the level 3 hospitals, getting these guys. So we were taking care of, all these Iraqis. And I remember helping carrying the wounded Iraqis off the helicopters, slipping in the blood on the back, and all these little things kind of.
Oh, yeah.
And it was weird because when I got home, I started waking up at 3 or 3:05. Just I'd wake up at 3 or I'd wake up at 3:05,
Yeah.
and I couldn't go back to sleep. No matter how bad you wanted to go to sleep, there was no going back to sleep. I finally just gave up, and I would go down, make a pot of coffee, sit on my computer, and I would start writing.
Yeah.
And I started writing stories about OCS and
Yeah.
TBS and flight school, and
Yeah.
it was called thesandgram.com. I think it's still up, but I haven't written in years. And it was therapeutic in a way.
Oh, absolutely. I could see that.
I would just write stories. But it wasn't until, believe it or not, I went to Afghanistan, and I was supposed to be, I was going to go, I forget where I was going, but I ended up going to, I told you, PMA, Political Military Affairs, through the U.S. Embassy, but working with the Afghan police over at Camp Eggers, which was about a 15, 20-minute car ride in Kabul. And I'm there, and because this is the goofiest thing, lieutenant colonel and above could self-drive an SUV in Kabul, anywhere you wanted. Major, lieutenant colonel below, major below, you had to have an A driver. So it was always a pain for the majors and captains to go make a meeting because you had to drag somebody, safety guy.
Yeah.
And yet I know they made that rule, the Army did, because you couldn't swing a dead cat without killing a colonel. And
Yeah,
so
I always knew, when we first set up over there, I always knew that it was going to get too bureaucratic when they started running, you get a speeding ticket on Bagram.
Not wearing your disco belt. Yes.
I can relate. That one of the kind of wrapping into, some of the work I did over there. I remember we one time had this guy that we had gotten this, he had kind of written in, he didn't actually write in, but he had given a note to a guard, and that note, an Army soldier, and that note made it to me. And we made arrangements and gave him instructions to meet us somewhere along this long stretch of road. I had a description of his car. I had a description of his car, description of him. I gave him a time in which to leave, and I kind of generally knew where he was coming from, so I knew what time to expect him. We had a unit that was covering us with 50 cal. We had another small group that was behind this berm. But at the end of the day, it was me and one of my colleagues, and we were all dressed up in local garb. I had a broken down. We popped the hood on our beat up old, whatever it was, Toyota Corolla, local car, and we're sitting there like we're fixing our problem, and we PID this vehicle. Now there's nobody out in this particular. We got lucky; there was nobody on the road at the time. But you still don't know. You don't know. I mean, we haven't had a personal meeting with him yet, and we don't even know if it's going to be worth meeting him.
Right.
But, this is how you got to go through your due diligence on these things. And this guy had volunteered to somebody, at least on a note. And I said, if anybody's going to take the risk of meeting the guy, it's going to be me. So you're sitting there, and I told him I would give him a signal. I didn't tell him what it was going to be. So I took off my little red kofcha, and I just start waving it on the side of the road. My little bandana, my scarf. And it's his vehicle, no doubt. It matches it perfectly. And I can remember him pulling up. He's slowing down. You get, you get to that point where, okay, from this point forward, if he's going to clack himself off, there's absolutely, nothing that I'm going to be able to do about it. We've taken all the precautions that we could take up to that point. We've done everything that we possible up to that point under the circumstances we were in. But now it was truly, I don't know where it was going to go. And there's kind of you kind of say a couple quick prayers. And I always used to remember this. I remember this when I was flying on the back of a Black Hawk in the insert of Afghanistan when they had their night aerial refuel. I'm like, if it's going to happen, just let it be like that.
Yeah.
1 second you're there, and then the half a second later you're not, and that's fine. You'll never know the difference. And just kind of that, and a lot of guys have felt I never felt so vulnerable. There's nothing more I can do from this point out. It's literally in the hands of fate. And of course he pulls up. We have a little back and forth. It's him. We have established.
Is he in a robe? Did you have him lift up?
We did all that. What we did was we had strong pointed a position off the main road, up over the hill, up over the rise and stuff like that, where we had already strong pointed position. He fell in behind one of the other vehicles, came in from behind the berm, and the other one came in behind him. And then we drove a pretty good distance into the strong pointed position where we had observation for a million miles. And then, got him out of the vehicle,
searched
the vehicle, obviously searched him very thoroughly, and then went about our meeting. And we took those precautions for every time anyone we meet with. It was just kind of SOP. Realizing that, if later on he got some idea or he was really being, he's being really, really controlled by the bad guys, that, our strict security procedures would mitigate any damage he might cause if he tries to come back with a suicide. I'm not saying he wouldn't be very effective in killing some people, but, trying to mitigate it. That vulnerable feeling you have when you realize you've done everything you could do.
Yeah.
You can only do so much. And if this guy wants to clock himself off at this particular point in time, before we can actually get to search him, he's going to do that. And then when you see some of these, you saw him, some of these IEDs go off. I don't know if you really truly respect the blast itself and the strength of it and the enormity of some of these things. Just when you're the concussion that you feel. I remember the one in Kabul. I'm on one mini at the embassy in Kabul that time. I think it was 07 or 08 when we were over there at the same time. You and I were there at the same time, I think. Guy's head blew off. The suicide bomber's head blew off and landed about 2 buildings over on top of a building, about a 4-story building.
No, wait. Yeah.
Somehow of course I wasn't there, so he clacks himself off over by the embassy. It was really close to the embassy. I can't remember. I can't remember exactly the details. And he's got the vest on, but somehow the way it was set up, it literally took off his entire, this is not the nicest thing we'll talk about. It took off his entire head, and the head flew like up over and a couple blocks, like it flew like 300 something feet and landed on top of this 3 or 4 story building. And it was just laying there on the side of the head. I remember seeing the picture of it when the guys came in to do the investigation on in this case, it was a suicide vest.
If this was the same one, this is so freaking bizarre. I worked in Jack's house. We called it Jack's house on Camp Eggers. And right next to me was the Ark of the Covenant. So you had all the generals in this area.
Yep.
And I'm in Jack's house, which is right next door. And they had a conference room downstairs, but we were upstairs. We had like 5 offices. And it was supposedly the house that belonged to the kid that wrote Kite Runner. That's
Okay. Yeah. Great book.
So I'm in Jack's house, and it had a big sign, Jack's house or whatever. And I'm upstairs. I used to smoke a lot, and I would go take a smoke break out on this little on this deck, and I'd look and I'd watch the operation of the guy that would come up and refuel. He would pull right up next to the HESCOs. He would get out. He would put a big giant 4x4 plank across from the top of his truck to the HESCO, and then he would grab this big giant hose and he would carry it over and he would hand it down to the Canadians that were down there, the Canadian PSD guys and the Army dudes, and they had all the generators
Mhm.
over here and the gas tanks for them. And then they'd run the gas line over there and fill up
Yeah.
the diesel. And I kept thinking, I'm sitting there smoking a cigarette, watching these guys, and I kept thinking, holy shit, all you have to do
Yeah.
is have a truck pull up.
And
The guy's normal. No, not even a IED. Normal truck. This is what I would do if I was Mitch Bell, king for the day. Watching the every Tuesday, these guys come out, set the truck up, do the lines. I would have a truck that's empty with 20 hardcore, you know, bat hitting mofos in the inside of it.
yeah.
They would scramble up on the top, run across those boards. They could just start shooting everybody. They would take out all of the command, General Cone and everybody that was in there, General Iardi, the Canadian general, the Australian general. Everybody in the Ark would be dead. They would cut the head off of the Army,
Yeah. No. Yeah.
and
I,
then run through the base, right? So I kept thinking that, and then I would remind young Army personnel, they always, their uniform of the day was PT gear with the Army shirt, a belt, disco belt, and their M4. And I stand in chow line one day, this girl, and I go, "Hey, let me ask you a question. If they invaded and got over the wall, and Hajis or bad guys are running through and they're shooting everybody, what would you do? What would be the first thing you do? We're standing right here in line right now." She goes, "Well, I'd grab my weapon and defend, my position." I go, "That's great." I go, "But here's another question. You're wearing PT gear, so I can see everything.
here's your magazine with the
Where are you
bullets.
hiding some magazines?" And she kind of looked at me and I go, "Because I know your
Oh,
weapon's cleared.
yeah.
So where are your magazines that
Yeah.
you're going to defend yourself?" And I go, "Probably a good idea to start carrying your magazines." But
The
the
locations we were at, we would actually have active shooter drills. We had somebody inside the compound. Also to include because of things like that. There that one tactic you talked about of blasting a hole in the wall and then having a follow-on force follow through. That happened at one of the locations, and it caused killed a couple of U.S. service members, and not a good thing. And it took a while for them to get that back under control because now you had armed,
oh,
bad guys inside the wire, inside the
yeah.
compound, and that's bad. And people are doing a variety of different things. And so
But
I always carried at least my pistol with me everywhere I went, no matter
oh
what.
yeah.
Locked the
Well,
car.
I never finished. I rotated that October of '08, and my replacement is sitting at my desk. This is like 2 weeks later. And what you're talking about was I forgot what the other embassy was across that road at Camp Eggers. The
Oh yeah,
dude
yeah.
the dude's in the suicide vehicle, and he pulls up behind he pulls up behind the truck with the big tank on it, thinking it was the dudes that was doing the gas.
Mhm.
He pulls up behind the septic tank truck
I
that
thought you.
ran the hose over because we had septic tanks, right?
Yeah,
All the shitters
yeah.
dumped into this one septic tank, and he was sucking the shit out. Well, the dude drives right up to the back of him, and he lights himself off and blows the car up.
And
And
literally,
his upper torso flew over Camp Eggers and landed on the deck outside of my office. Like the explosion happened. I always thought, what would happen when they have the explosion? They have this little chicken wire all
yeah,
over the glass.
yeah, yeah.
And I thought, how's that going to, the shrouds of the glass. Anyway, he heard the explosion and immediately dropped to the deck under his desk. And he's under his desk and debris is falling all around. Well, all of a sudden he hears a thunk and he looks over to his right and there's this upper torso of this burned person. And he thought, oh my God, it's a soldier. But it turned out it was the driver
Was
of
the
the
driver.
thing that blew himself up behind the septic truck. Allah Akbar.
Allah Akbar. I guess so. I guess we. Yeah. Good guy got to win that day. Unfortunately, there's
There's
so
too
many of
many
these type
good
of stories.
hits, unfortunately.
People
Yeah.
looking at so many thousands of IDs. It's just it got to be too much the norm. I remember I can just sitting around Kabul, you would hear explosions go off, and you kind of knew what they were when they went off, and the
Are they
dread. Who was it? Did anybody get hurt? Was anybody killed? Who was it targeted? Things like that always went with that, or anywhere else that was in Iraq or and stuff. I still remember I got so many different little tidbits, little stories on here and there being faced with what I thought was a potential car bomb or suicide bomber, or even during the Iraq invasion, where a vehicle was approaching the rear or our location. We were kind of in the rear off to the side, and we couldn't get it to go away, and we were in the outside of Najaf, and no matter what we tried, I had a gun, a machine gun, and I had my M4, and I'm making the commands, and he just doesn't. Fired a few warning shots. And there were three gentlemen in this car, and I was concerned that the driver had his hands taped to the steering wheel, and that would definitely be a dead giveaway. What ended up happening is he didn't completely stop the car, but the two passengers got out of the vehicle as it was moving towards us at a very slow rate of speed. We're firing warning shots. It probably allowed it to get too close. And then the driver finally bailed out.
Uh-huh.
But the vehicle is just barely moving. It's just like hitting up against the curb. And it finally just comes to a rest. So it wasn't like the driver had
jammed the accelerator
or something like that. And the guy's eyes was like wide open like this. And because we were just about ready to just vaporize them, and then I had no idea what their intent was beyond that. The car didn't explode, but we finally convinced them not to get out of the vehicle and move on. In this case, they just abandoned the vehicle, and it was also it was during the invasion, so as that operational theater things matured, and I think that the attacks became more sophisticated, and it's with the IEDs and everything else. But early on, I mean, I can think of times of driving around Baghdad in the early days. We just only been there days, where it really wasn't. It was bad, but it really wasn't as bad as it would be like 2 years later. Or something like that. So
IEDs were game changers, because that's such
it was, and we had to move a certain way, and sometimes we're channeled where we can go. There's only so many ways you can leave, and so many ways you can go. And then there was different tactics on how different entities moved, and I preferred to kind of be more on the low vis side. Didn't attract as much attention, and you also didn't piss as many people off. And you also didn't get IED'd as much, but some of the other military entities would move big, strong, hard, and fast, and loud. And that was their TTPs. That was what they decided to do. And I was never a big fan of that, regardless of who they were transporting, because it just attracted more attention to yourselves. And the blast is going to kill you just as bad whether you're going 30 miles an hour or going 60 miles an hour. But anyhow, what do I know? But that was, and then I remember those type of movements, and there's guys that have done this thousands of times, would start eating on you. And then after a while, it just stopped bothering me.
Well, you know what got me through it was the first 2 weeks of driving back and forth by myself.
Yeah.
I'm trying to vary my routes and the time, so it wasn't at 08. Here comes Lieutenant Colonel Taco Bell.
Yep.
Out the gate, and he's going past the Pakistani embassy. I tried to vary it, but I also got yelled at a lot because the Army guys get mad. I never washed the car, and they're like, "Sir, you got to wash the car." And I'm like,
I want to do that.
You drive around Kabul? Yeah. I said, do you see all the local cars are all dirty and nasty? I want to blend in. A washed car says, shoot me. I'm sorry.
Well, also, it's also, with some basic safety rules, it's hard to see if somebody's tampered with your vehicle. If your car's called nice and clean. Now, the car doesn't stay very clean there for very long. Don't get me wrong. Okay. No. It's usually covered in dust. The whole thing's a crap hole. But, I agree. There's a right balance in all of that. So,
but I'm driving back and forth, and I'm staying up. I can't sleep at night because Dawn, all I could think about was the soldiers and Marines I dealt with in Iraq with the IEDs
I know.
and that, right? And all I could think of is I'm in a thin skin SUV
Yeah.
by myself. And I felt like a turtle because I've got this. I think I shrank half an inch. Every day you turn your head sideways to get it through the neck, get
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
on, lift the front pouch,
Yep.
zip, Velcro, put
Mhm.
that pouch down, M16. So as I'm driving, I've got the seat all the way back, my toes hitting the
Yep.
gas because I've got so much shit on me. And all I could think of is some jackass. I'm at the stoplight in traffic in Kabul, and you hear the motorcycles. That's what scared me the most were the motorcycles. And some jackass rolling up on me and tossing a couple hand grenades underneath my boxed
Yeah.
in car and taking off. And I'm thinking, damn, I'm going to die. And my chief, Navy chief, looks at me one day and he goes, "Sir, how you doing?" And I go, "I'll be honest. I'm not handling the transition as well as I thought I would. I'm not sleeping, and I'm kind of worried about stuff." And he goes, "Sir, can I give you some advice?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "You believe in God?" And I said, "Yeah, I believe in God." And he goes, "Go home tonight, get on your knees at your rack, and you pray that you will die fast." He goes, "Just ask for a quick death and that your family's taken care of."
Yep.
He goes, "Because if you don't accept the fact that you will get hit on this tour,
Yeah.
you're never going to make it through 8 months of this
It's a good
because
advice. True.
you're flying all around the country, you're doing weird stuff. So, you know, just accept the fact that you're going to die. If you do that,
Oh
you're going to
yeah.
survive."
I had the same attitude a couple trips, and I couldn't agree with you more.
I did. It was 1,000 pounds off my shoulders. I slept well that night, and I never. And then the selfish part you talk about. It wasn't until later I really thought that was such a dumb ass move on my part to leave my wife and young 3 kids. But that's the only way I survived that deal was
Yeah,
embracing.
yeah, those are reflections you have afterwards, but I couldn't agree with you more in the attitude that you have to approach at the time. I remember, in a pretty crappy location, and we were driving down a lot of traffic, a lot of crowds, and we look up and there's a young, I don't know, probably an 18 or 19-year-old kid in a hand grenade in his hand. It was a one of the Russian hand grenades could have been Chinese with the big fuse that stuck out the top,
Yeah.
and his hand was
Uh,
shaking. This all happened like this. I was I think it was a right-hand steering vehicle. One of my buddies was driving. I was in the left front seat, and we had one of our liaison colleagues was with us. He actually saw it first. He raised his AK to shoot through the glass at the gentleman because it looked like he was going to pull the pin, or maybe he had already pulled it. He was holding on to the spoon, and I immediately looked up. I instinctively was trying to keep him from. Because first of all, it would have blown my ears out. But anyhow, one of my guys was smart and took the proper evasive maneuvers with the vehicle, basically get off the X, and
uh-huh.
so the other officer couldn't get his weapon toned in on it fast enough, and the other vehicle behind us did the same thing. They weren't too sure why, but they knew we were just saying that. We called them really quick and we got the heck out of there. And it was a Hilux pickup, a 4-door Hilux pickup, and it could have been easy to toss it in the bed or something like that. And there's no doubt in my mind that was exactly what this kid was going to do. You could
Hmm.
look on his face, what he had his hands shaking and stuff like that. Whether he would have gotten the nerve now at the last minute to do it. Now he might have said, "No, I can't do this." But up until that point, that's what it looked like, and this all happened very quickly. And just because there was a lot of people moving through in the crowds and stuff like that, and then boom, we see this guy, and it could have been these other people too. If anybody really knew what they were doing, they could have easily dropped a hand grenade in the bed of the pickup truck. Man, it would have obviously done some significant damage. So, yeah, I mean, dumb luck. I don't know. Maybe I think I like to say, like I said, I think I said this yesterday. You kind of make some of your own luck through
Yeah.
your preparation and your training. You do make some of your own luck. Luck can be bad, but hopefully I always remember people that you can have good luck or bad luck.
Yeah, every
So
plane goes to shit after the first round goes downrange,
yeah,
kind of thing.
no plans to survive first contact. That's an old
Yeah,
one. There's some amount of truth to that, but you got to have a basic plan, and then you
right.
can deviate off that. But I remember you get these big operational briefs on what you're going to do, and I remember saying, "Okay, that's great. We plan for all these contingencies, but just realize what we just briefed is exactly what will not happen." This is that's exactly it might generally happen that way, but that's exactly what's not going to happen. Where it's going to be a
Yeah,
variation of that. Hopefully, not too much of a variation.
yeah.
You
Well,
got to understand that that's exactly what's not going to happen. We just briefed everybody on what's not going to happen. I'm being a little facetious when I say that, but over the
it's
top. But
true.
there's some truth to it. Uh, so yeah, so I always got a kick out of something like that. But
Going back, you talked about talking it through with somebody
yeah,
really helped out.
it
And I'm
does.
going to give a shout out right now to a fellow pilot named Perry Brown because I'm an instructor. He was an instructor at the time. I was an FO, and we had the best trip ever. We had a 24-hour layover at an all-inclusive place in Antigua. So,
Nice.
thumbs up,
You
beach,
know how to find
hot.
a nice place to lay over. Wow.
Yeah, it was a great layover, right? And we started drinking at maybe 9 that morning. I mean, we're there all day. We don't leave the next day until, I don't know, noonish, 1 o'clock. And we're down at the beach and we started,
Mhm.
guy comes down, hey, what would you like, sir? Oh, hey, we'd
So
like
I
this.
call them adult beverages.
Yeah, adult beverages. We had a few. And by the time that night, we'd gone back, showered, met back at the restaurant, and we're in the restaurant. I'm kind of, I'm probably at my limit. And Perry started asking me some questions about Iraq and Afghanistan.
Mhm,
And it wasn't intentional, but the way he did it,
mhm,
it was like he had peeled back a can and pulled the lid
yeah,
off,
mhm.
and all of these emotions came flooding out.
Yeah,
Literally,
been
I'm
there.
standing there with him. I'm at the table, and I am sobbing like a little girl. I mean, deep sobs, crying my eyes out. He reaches over and he just grabs me and he's holding me. Now, whether everybody around thought we were two gay guys breaking up or something,
There's
I
anything wrong with
don't
that?
know. But I cried uncontrollably
I've been there. I've
and
been
sobbed in the restaurant, and I'd never done that, right? And
it's
I
a scary
released.
it's in that kinda I find it sometimes not scary is not the right word, but you feel when I feel vulnerable when I can't control my emotions.
Mhm.
And that it's really difficult for me, and I'm sure most of us feel the same way. But
Yeah, well,
I've had I'll be it still happens to me today,
yeah,
not today, but in today's world, it still happens to me. I'll be maybe a song will be playing, something triggers it,
right.
atmosphere, whatever. Maybe you're thinking about this or whatever. Man, I'll watch. I become a big teddy bear. I'll watch some TV show, and I'm like, it
Mhm.
triggers something, and I just find myself hypersensitive and emotional. Uh, it's probably happened to me the most when I'm driving in my car going
Mhm.
somewhere. And for whatever reason, I don't know, and I bawled my eyes out. I've done that a number of times. I'd say probably at least 10 or 15 times. I can tell you that right now. I don't know what triggers it. I don't know what does it at times. Uh, I feel
You
like
sure
every
does feel
time.
good the next day, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, you do. I think it's healthy. Uh,
Yeah.
as long as I think it's healthy that everybody reacts to these things differently. God knows, and there's a lot more guys and gals that have a lot more established, a lot more trauma than I have. And also, what age did it happen to you at? I was a bit older when I had a lot of these combat experiences. I was in my 40s, early
I was
40s.
40, yeah.
Yeah, and that I think that's different than being 18 years old. I
Yeah.
had 40 plus years of life experiences, and not that it's not that help. It can't help. It can't help being a bit older, but there's no guarantee with that. but going all the way back to my flying days in OV-10s, we lost guys in the squadron, and
Yeah.
we averaged 2 guys a year. It was for the 3.5 years I was there, and it was unfortunate, but we did average 2 guys a year. And we would sit around, at first of the year and say, okay, a year from now, 2 of us won't be here. And for that time I was there, that was the case, unfortunately. That was during peacetime, just, because in aviation, you're going to have accidents.
Yeah, you'll have accidents.
It's never going to stop. And so, that, dealing with that, whatever you can. So that's, I hear you, man. I feel exactly, I know I've been there. I encourage my buddies, my friends and colleagues to talk to me about any issues that they have, or reach out for help or whatever they need to do to tackle this monster at times that kind of creeps up. We all have our demons, and they come out at strange times.
Yeah.
And educate yourself on at least when you can see it in yourself, and when you can see certain things happen, you have certain reactions yourself, so you'll be better prepared on how to deal with it. I can't say that enough to folks. I mean, the suicide rate with some of our veterans it's just not acceptable.
It's insane. That's why I volunteer. I mean, I always tell my wife, I came home whole. I mean, at least whole. There could be some stuff that lingers, but
that sometimes is the worst stuff. I mean, not just for everybody, but I mean, it can be bad. And so,
but that's why I'm willing to volunteer, because others came back missing 3 limbs. I've worked with guys, and it's
I know.
They've got the 3 limbs and they got this. So, anything I can do to help.
I couldn't agree with you more. I couldn't agree with you more. So building the awareness, continuing to build the awareness, showing the support. That's a big thing with me, and making sure that you have that outreach to young men and women to make sure that we don't have any more.
Have you need to listen? I'll find the Joe Rogan show.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to listen to this show. He's talking about class 1, schedule 1 drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And years ago in the 70s, I think they had made this certain drug class schedule 1. And nobody's ever OD'd on it or anything like that. But apparently the benefits of this drug is to just wipe out PTS, reset your brain.
Oh,
right? And you have to go to Mexico.
What a hell of a drug, man.
No. This is like the success rate of this thing.
Really? I haven't heard. I don't know. Wow.
Oh, dude, it's down in Mexico.
Wow.
A special forces guy started his own clinic.
Yeah.
In Tijuana.
Good.
And so the guys can come across the border. They do this deal. It's not mushrooms, but it's I'm having a brain fart now on the name of it.
Okay.
But like guys that have addiction to pills, guys that have alcoholic addictions.
The usual alcohol. Once it come up,
the guys with the PTS, it wipes it clean. And the guys, they come back, like a wife goes, I have my husband from before the war back.
Yeah.
So
great.
there are benefits. And I believe Joe was talking to Bobby Kennedy about it. And he was also talking to Trump on his podcast for veterans' health. Joe is a big proponent of helping veterans. Mm-hmm. Love that about the guy. So Bobby Kennedy is trying, I think one of the things he'll try to do is to get that drug off Schedule 1 so that they can allow to do it here in the States and treat, instead of, my buddy who killed himself, James Newport, literally, I'm on the phone with him that night. Everything's great, right? I mean, we're going to work on his armored vehicle the next day. We're talking about, I got the SEAL kit. All right, we got this. The tools are ready. And we're going to work on this vehicle. And I talked to him for 45 minutes. Never got an inclination that anything was wrong, right? The reason is because when he got back, the VA or the Army got him on antidepressants and antipsychotic drugs, right? And so he's taking this cocktail, and he liked to drink his beer. And the problem is the alcohol with those pills made him feel like crap.
Oh.
So without telling anybody, he went cold turkey, and he got off those things. And he was living at his mom's house.
Yeah.
A retired sergeant, first class. and
That's just
he's at his mom's house. He comes in from working on his in his shop. He comes into the house. He gets in a fight with his mom. She yells at him about something. He goes into his bedroom, pulls out a 45, comes back, points it at his mom, and she goes, "What are you going to do? Shoot me, dumbass?" And she said something clicked in his eyes, and all of a sudden he just put the gun up to his head and shot himself. And I think it was the high. He was up here, and then all of a sudden, instant low because of the drugs,
so sad.
and he realized, "Oh my God, what have I done?" And he killed himself in front of his mom. But had he not been on those drugs, it's not like he could reach out and call me. But the next morning, had he slept it off, he would have apologized and
Yeah.
realized, God, I can't believe I did that. But I think at that moment in time, but I believe personally that it was because of the drugs that he was on caused his death. And that's how we treat our veterans, with drugs. So I'm saying if we go down to Mexico and you're able to use this natural remedy that's illegal for some reason, and it's able to reset the wiring so that you're normal, I think we need to investigate that.
Yeah, being around your loved ones, the best thing I can be around is be around my grandkids.
Yeah.
I've been a grandfather for about 4.5 years now. From my first granddaughter was born, and man, it just resets everything. It gets you perspective that it's great being a father, of course, but when you're a grandfather, it just I don't know. It's just a special feeling. It's a different feeling. It's a special feeling, and that really puts things back in perspective, like where they need to be.
Yeah, true.
And I'm also the other perspective I have is when I was talking when I started the broadcast off with that ambush that we got hit. The day of that ambush was October 31st, and so and there's been other days, and I reeled off some dates earlier, but that's I always called that my second birthday.
Mm.
Uh, and every year, including this year, I say, hey, it's my, when I was old, it's my 20th birthday, it's my 21st birthday, whatever happens to be, and still is. I mean, I've to a certain respect, I've kind of, I used to go through a part there for a while, like, okay, well, if I was spared, why? What am I supposed to do next? Uh, and then where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do with my life? Am I supposed to, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And
Hmm.
am I doing enough? And am I, whatever. Well, why was I spared? Uh, and so I call it my second birthday.
I like
And
that.
I kind of look at it from the perspective of everything that's happened since that date forward has been a super bonus. Now, of course,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
much of my life has happened since then. This when it comes to my kids and my grandkids and all that good stuff. It's been a super bonus, and it's like I'm way ahead of the power curve, regardless. Whenever that day comes for all of us, but it's always been my second birthday, and I kind of celebrate it as such because I do celebrate it. I don't know why, because I said that one particular incident happened to be so personal.
Yeah.
And I can't even explain why that was. It's not like I knew the other people that were trying to kill me. I just knew that it was just very personal to me. And so that second birthday, Halloween's never the same since then. I can tell you that right now because it's October 31st. It's never the same for me. But this October 31st, I was with my grandkids and we're doing trick or treating. And let me tell you, I love that holiday. There's not a better way to spend my second birthday than with my grandkids trick or treating. So it was fantastic. But that's my lease on life on things, and it does ease the burden significantly moving forward. Uh, yeah, even really because it's like okay, good
You,
second lease on
you know,
life. I'm
you,
great.
you know what people don't understand about what we've seen and done? You're sitting with somebody November 25th. I'm having dinner with Master Sergeant Brett Angus, and he's got this young Lance Corporal, their
Mhm.
EOD, and he's got this young Lance Corporal who had just transferred from Fallujah because her trainer got blown up in front of her and really kind of freaked her out. So they gave her some time away back at Lejeune. She came back and they paired her up with Brett. So now he's her trainer. And I'm sitting at dinner with Brett and this Lance Corporal, um, and my buddy who is a master sergeant. God, I'm having a brain fart. But we're having dinner. Next day, Brett's killed. What was that, November 26th? They were changing their tactics. He disarmed the IED with the robot, and he got out of the MRAP to go check, and that's when the wall next to him had the IED with the shape charge, and it blew up and killed him. So when regularly, because my master sergeant was friends with him, he was EOD guy, but he worked for MWSS. So one day, we're having dinner all the time with this guy, and the next day he's gone.
Yeah.
And then on my birthday, I turned 40 years old. Brett was 40. And the whole time I'm trying to, they're taking some pictures. I'm trying to smile, but it was really difficult because after we got done with that, we had to go downstairs, unlock the gate, open the gates to the VIP pad. 300 Marines from MWSS 272, I think it was 272, or no, maybe it was 274, came out and they brought his casket and we loaded it in the back of C-130 with my buddies who were the pilots, old squadron mates. And we loaded his body in the middle instead of taking him all the way down. We're like, hey, can we do it here? And the general's like, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So we took care of him, put the flag draped coffin right in the center of the C-130, or up close to the front, had American flag hanging up. And as he went by, everybody slowly saluted and his body was transferred. And I was sitting there thinking, I just turned 40 today and Brett is never going to have another birthday. It was bizarre realization. And people don't, I think that's one thing people don't get is the death is a very real thing. So, and that's a hard thing to wake up to next morning.
It is, and I remind myself at times when my knees ache or my back hurts, or I'm getting, just as the problems you have as you get older or get to be an old man, well into your 60s. And sometimes I have to hit myself upside the head and say, Don, just be thankful that you can feel that pain, feel that discomfort, and it kind of resets things for me. I remember working with some colleagues years later, and one of the guys was throwing a temper tantrum in his office. It's completely civilian. We're back in the States, and I went in a little bit later, and I asked him what was wrong, and he tells me, "Oh, you wouldn't believe what this guy did and that guy did, and stuff like that." And he's throwing books around and stuff like that. And I had just come back from one of my tours in Afghanistan, and I looked at him and I go, "Did anybody shoot at you today?" He goes, "No, Don, nobody shot at me." Well, no, why? I go, "You're really not having a bad day until somebody's shooting at you." So I got out, and walked away. And now this guy, for the next few hours, he feels about this tall.
Yeah.
And he comes back to my office a couple hours later and apologizes. I said, "There's no reason to apologize to me." He goes, I thought I was having problems. My problems are minuscule compared to somebody that's getting shot at or blown up that day. And I said, yeah, that puts everything in perspective. And there was a couple of years later, I remember, or months later, I'd see this guy. I mean, I've used it with other people I've worked with. They stick their head in my office. "Nobody shot at me today." It's perspective.
It is.
It's perspective, trying to keep things perspective. Obviously, he was very frustrated and upset at what he was working on. That was very important to him. I understand that, but let's keep it in perspective. You're having a bad day, in my opinion, when somebody's shooting at you or trying to blow you up. Outside of that, it's not that bad of a day.
Oh no. I use that.
I understand that life is not quite that simple, but I'm kind of a simple guy and keep it in simple terms. So, Always keep it in perspective, man. You know,
we're 6 feet above ground and nobody's shooting at us.
Sometimes we have this sense of self-importance that just doesn't really, you know,
yeah. I say that all the time.
Happy to
I
be
walk back,
here.
talk to the passengers, and it's like, nobody's shooting at us. Why are you so happy? I go, because you guys have all gone through TSA, so I know you're not armed. And I go, and nobody's shooting at me today, and I'm 6 feet above ground, so life's good.
Man. I'm good to go.
Well, Don, we're running up on a hard time here for the show. We've got to cut off. This has been probably the best hour and 50 minutes. Very, very cathartic. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate you.
I really enjoyed it.
Well, listen, man, maybe we'll come back around for a part 3. We'll figure out something.
It's possible. There's a lot more out there if you want it. There's more. I only scraped the surface.
I know. All you guys, man. You guys are like onions. I got to figure out how to peel that onion back for. Well, listen, brother, you have a wonderful new year. I wish you and your family nothing but blessed health. And that's all. We could have $1 million in the bank right now, but it's health. If you had $10 million, but you got cancer, you got a shitty life. So it's all about health. That's all I ask is that God
bless you and your family. Thanks for everything.
Yeah, God blesses you and your family with health, and I hopefully will see you. If I can get a Dulles layover, I will come up and check you out.
You know.
All right. All right, man. I'm gonna. This will be part 2. I'm gonna post this the following week, and I hope everybody enjoyed this conversation. And I'll send you some links that you can share out to your friends. Do you have any last minute things? Any last save round? All right.
Good.
All right, brother. I'll see you soon. All right.
That sounds
Hold
great.
on one second. I'll talk to you in the green room. Hold on one second. Hoorah. Nope, that's not what I wanted. I wanted to do this. Here we go. Hold on one second. Hey, folks, listen, seriously, this has been incredible 4 hours, almost 3.5 hours. I've spoken to Don. If you haven't caught the first episode, go back and listen to the first episode. Just an amazing life. His survival of being hit with a 2,000-pound JDAM is beyond belief. Normally, a guy would not be able to talk to the average person about what happened to him. And the fact that he can is a testament to his survival and to the Almighty up there. So, thank you so much. You guys have a great day. Adios. Hasta luego. Auf Wiedersehen. Tschüss. Shesheni. Au revoir. Domo arigato gozaimasu. Tano shinde. Kudasai. Ciao. Arrivederci. Tashikur. Assalamu alaikum. Mahala. Do widzenia. Das vidania. And I'm going to go out with this one. Until next week. Adios.